Hi everyone and welcome to Level of Detail, brought to you by the University of Staffordshire's Game Institute. I'm Jamie and I'm joined by game art student Jodie and course director Davin. Today we are talking about The Last of Us, a hugely popular game which had an equally successful TV series. The second series of the TV series has recently been released, so we'd like to take a look back through the original game and have a little bit of a play around, talk about why it was so successful. How are we doing, folks? We doing well?
I'm all good, thank you.
Pretty good, yeah.
Awesome. Davin, I'm going to ask you to jump straight in.
Let's for it.
Let's have a little play around. Let's see what's going on. Now, you're a fan of The Last of Us, aren't you?
I'm somewhat of a fan, yes.
Somewhat a fan, yeah. Played it when it first came out?
I did, yes. Back in 2013. Yeah, it was...
Oh, that hurt.
Yeah, it's getting on a bit now. So like 12 years ago, and it was huge when it came out. Obviously, Naughty Dog had just finished off doing the Uncharted trilogy. So we had Uncharted 1, 2 and 3 obviously, and then they came out with The Last of Us. And interestingly, they actually teased The Last of Us in Uncharted 1. There's like a poster kind of talking about the infection in one of the first scenes of the Uncharted game. But yeah, it was hugely influential when it kind of came out. It had a massive impact from a narrative point of view.
Amazing. How about yourself, Jodie? Have you had much experience with the game?
We studied it back in year one. I can talk about that, but it was
Go
more of
ahead.
like a visual side of things. So we had a course called CAVS. I don't know if that's still going on, that module. I'm
What
not
does that
entirely
stand
too sure.
for?
Oh my God. I've been here for 3 years now. I've slept a lot since then. Something about the
Character art, visual studies,
Yeah,
I
that's the
imagine.
one.
Yep.
That's the one. Yeah, and we had to look into The Last of Us and talk about like scene composition, like the use of color and everything like that. So I see it on more of like a visual side of things. Like my dad plays the game religiously and he'll talk to me about it a lot, and like I've seen gameplay myself. I've yet to fight my dad off of it so I can get to play it because he has stolen it and he refuses to let me play it until he's completed it. So waiting for that opportunity, but yeah, no, on a visual side it is chef's kiss.
I was fascinated with it when it was first coming out in 2013, because that was kind of the time that I first got into this style of video game. And that era for games and games technology in general was really, I want to say dynamic, but it was just also a little bit whack in the case of where like some studios were creating, like if we're talking like visual style, The Last of Us was like celebrated for how pretty it is, things like the lighting and the cutscenes that we're seeing on screen now. And if you look on the flip side of things, like a game that came out in 2011, like Fallout New Vegas, was a completely different entirely like level of detail, gesundheit, and like different like levels of art style and how things looked. It's really interesting to look back and look at games in that time frame and see how they've evolved. We're playing the intro now.
Uncle Tommy, what time is it?
Do you remember playing the intro first time round?
I did, yes. Spoilers, obviously, for anyone kind of watching, but the intro is very emotional. Something that's like stayed with me forever, effectively. So when the TV show came out, my wife had never actually played the game. She's not really a gamer, but it was very interesting to kind of getting her to watch that intro and kind of see how she would react to it, because they do it very similar, obviously, in the TV show, which is nice. So. Yeah, we're playing as Sarah right now. We've kind of just started. And yeah, let's get going.
As game developers, how important do you think storytelling is in games?
You want to go?
Oh, sure, yeah. I mean, obviously I do a lot of the visual side of it, being a games art student. Storytelling is something that we work on all the time. Like, even if a lot of the things I do is just like a visual like diorama or like still pieces, you're aiming to convey a story through that, regardless of like if there's movement, if there's a game to it behind it. Like, story games are one of those games that I feel like are so widely popular just because, you know, you get so immersed in it. It's like when you read a book, you know, you get into the story and you get so into it. I feel like a game is just, well, a story game is just a book but visualized. Like, you can see it, you can play through it, and you get lost in it. Like, I've played a lot of story games myself. I love them.
One of the things I love about Last of Us is this first opening section is so much of it is taught through just the visuals going on screen, the lighting, some of the visual effects going in the background. And as we get later into the game, we're going to start seeing lighting and visuals used in a way to drive gameplay as well. There's a chase sequence coming up where a lot of the direction of the chase sequence is dictated by the lighting in the level to guide the player towards where they're supposed to be. That's really interesting. Davin?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that's really powerful here is just how they've started to kind of set the scene for the game. We've just been introduced to Joel and Sarah. They had a brief dynamic before obviously Sarah gets kind of put to bed 'cause she fell asleep, and we're now kind of just in this really dark scenario where nothing's really happened. Sure, we've watched the news, you kind of saw some explosions going on, but you're already starting to kind of feel the vibe for kind of what's going on. And we kind of start to see, like right now, effectively, where things have really started to twist, and you can kind of...
Pascal's turned up.
Yeah.
Troy Baker. But you can start to kind of hear the emotion in his voice, and it's really starting to kind of build that pressure up in a moment. And obviously we're going to kind of see something in a second. But yeah, the narrative is kind of what keeps it. Now I am predominantly like a gameplay person first in games. It's kind of what keeps me keep playing, but it's the emotion of the narrative which makes you remember those games.
Yeah.
So I do struggle to replay these narrative games because for me it's like I play them, I get really invested, and that was kind of my time with it, and I look at it very fondly. And yeah, I mean, the acting in the scene is just absolutely superb.
One of the things I want to pick up on what you just said is you mentioned Troy Baker. Can you very quickly tell the audience who Troy Baker is?
He's a voice actor that's in everything.
Yes.
Nowadays. Yeah, so like this was one of his kind of breakout hits, I want to say. I mean, he was in plenty of games before this, but this is kind of what really put him on the map. But he has been in so many games, and yeah, he's incredible, like as a voice actor.
And we've not met her yet, and I don't know if we will meet Ellie, but it's important to point out Ellie as well, played by the absolutely amazing Ashley Johnson, who has also been featured in things like Critical Role and so many other games, Pillars of Eternity, Deadfire 2, which is a favourite of mine. That's just me shouting out Ashley Johnson because I think she's really cool. But no,
I think just on that point though, motion capture, obviously, it's a huge thing in games, and voice actors aren't just voice actors, really, and they haven't been for a while. But so this is like a full-on motion captured performance. They did everything right down to the facial animations and all that stuff. So they were able to really capture the power of the actors within inside of these scenes. So yeah.
I think one of the things that the Last of Us has done, because we're going to talk a little bit how The Last of Us has influenced games over the last 11 years, if my maths is correct, is The Last of Us brought together so many different areas of games development, areas of acting, pulling from lots of different caveats of the art form into one cohesive piece. Like, for example, we've got a building on fire there. That's done via visual effects, which is my bit. And it all coalesced together, and there's different bits that I think everyone who does game development can point to and go, I understand that bit, I understand that bit. Let's go back to talking a little bit about things like voice acting and things like soundtrack. Can we talk a little bit more about how those kind of things add to the storytelling?
For sure. I mean, this game uses its soundtrack exceptionally well. I mean, it all starts out when we first picked up the game. We would have had it playing at the start of this episode, and you can kind of just hear the guitar riffs just in there, and it really sets the tone for the game. And then it keeps using that motif throughout the game. When we get to like certain scenes, really emotional scenes, it brings it back, and it just really makes them kind of like stand out.
Jodie, I'm going to swing a question at you. So you're a game artist. What area of game art do you do? Remind us.
I specialise in environments, but I've dabbled a bit in hard surface as well.
Awesome. So what kind of things do you pick up on when we're watching this kind of stuff in terms of things like environments and hard surface?
Well, obviously, looking at it now, we're in a car, so I did a bit of cars in year 2. Very well put together, obviously professional studio, as you can see, but just overall, like, thing is, you can make a good environment, your models can be top tier, and they can be textured so well. If you don't have the lighting to go with that, you're doomed, basically. Like, lighting adds to everything. Like, you can change any scene from, I don't know, say you had like a bright theme park, you know, all happy, la 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 la. You switch that lighting to dark, oh my God, post-apocalyptic. You know, with the click of a button and the change of a color, you're in a completely different universe. And I think people forget that about environments. They think, oh, if the models aren't great, you know, it's going to be bad. Or if the lighting isn't like that, but you have great models, it's going to be bad. They go hand in hand with one another. You can't have a good environment without good lighting to match it. So it's a very sort of like, you need that balance. So you've got to understand the lighting to understand the environment, to convey that sense of storytelling, which obviously, with The Last of Us being a story-based game, the lighting can change everything. Same with the sound as well. Like, people forget as well that sound really adds to it. Like, if you ever like walk down the street and you've got some really good music going on, and you think you're the main character of whatever movie's going on right now.
Well, it's 'cause
in
I
Everyday
am.
Nice, exactly. We are all our own main characters. But like, it's not just the lighting, it's the music. All 3 of them create like the holy trinity, as I like to call it, of peak gameplay.
It's whenever I'm walking home at night listening to the entirety of Sabrina Carpenter's
Oh my God,
discography. I'll tell you who she is at some point, Davin.
So I think with the sound as well, obviously, Last of Us is a zombie game, but you know, it's heavily inspired from zombies, from the Resident Evil and all that stuff, and we're kind of used to the groans. But what this does with its enemies, the clickers, they actually have this like click, because that's the way kind of they communicate, and you can hear that like really distinctive sound effect in those haunting scenes, and it kind of helps you track down what's going on, you know, like who's going to be around and the different types of enemies, and really starts to instill that fear. If you can hear the clicking noise but you can't see them, you know they're kind of going to be around.
This is our. So we've just got to the part where you are now playing as Troy, Pascal, Baker,
Joel.
And we are now encountering one of the main enemies in this game. I absolutely love how they've done enemies in this game, because they are zombies, but they're mushroom zombies. It ruined Portobello's for me, but they're this really interesting sort of take on zombies, and there's a million different ways of doing zombies. The Last of Us, I think, aced it, because the kind of narrative they worked into the enemies in this game is really interesting.
Well, it's based off of science, right? Because it uses cordyceps. So I don't know if you know this, but there's actually fungus out there which can mind control ants by kind of taking over the brains, forcing them to kind of want to do things, and that's kind of the science that's based behind the creatures in this game.
I did look this up, and it gave me nightmares for days.
I did the exact same thing.
Oh,
nighttime, I was like, Last of Us, spores.
Yeah. They force
night.
ants to climb trees, and that's where they sort of germinate and send out more spores. And I've never felt sorry for an ant in my life. I did in that moment when I figured that out. This is where I kind of want to talk about things like, this is the kind of emotional stuff we were talking about earlier. Because we've just been introduced to these 2 wonderful characters, and we've had, maybe 15 minutes with them total? And this scene here has been pointed to as one of the most pivotal emotional scenes in games ever, I think. I'm assuming you 2 know what's about to happen.
Yeah, I mean, it's always stuck with me. But like, we've just obviously witnessed the collapse of society, effectively, like you say, in like the last 10, 15 minutes. We've gone from having 2 characters which were having a laugh about Sarah giving Joel a birthday present, the watch, to effectively this, where he thought he'd escaped, thought he saw a soldier that was going to protect him, but unfortunately, again, the acting kind of plays for itself, right, what's going on, and it was such a pivotal scene of what's going on right now, and you feel that emotional weight through the rest of the game, and it shapes Joel's character, which ultimately ends up leading him to obviously Ali and that relationship between them, and kind of how he kind of has like a foster daughter, effectively. But yeah, it's really, really powerful.
It's very sad. I will tear up if I watch it. Are there any other scenes in games that you can point to that have had like a similar effect to this?
For me, I'm a big Final Fantasy fan. There's a pivotal moment in Final Fantasy 7, which I really don't want to put a spoiler out for it on this one, but it's a very, very well-known scene about one of the characters towards the end. Obviously, we've just had the remake of that as well, and it's so powerful. You kind of get used to it. But yeah, what yourself?
I don't know. I tend to try and block it out when something traumatic like that happens. When it comes to movies, however, different story. I will cry for days over a film and a pivotal moment. I remember when Infinity War came out.
Yeah.
No, I did not talk to anyone for a week after the end of that. I was like, no, leave me alone. Need to process that. There's definitely been games, like I said, I just shut it out. I get so traumatized, I'll close the game. I'll go watch like something on YouTube, cheer myself up.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, okay, go back to playing it. And I'm like, something really bad just happened.
One of the things that really got me about the scene with Joel and his daughter is, again, we were talking about motion capture and acting performances, and imagine forgetting his name when I'm about to make a really poignant note. Troy Baker. Troy Baker's performance in that moment is absolutely amazing. What he does there is really, really awesome. I want to draw attention to it because voice acting and motion capture acting is a part of the art form that we've developed that's only sort of started to come to light in the last 30, 40 years. And there's a lot of hubbub currently about new technology replacing or removing that aspect of games development. I don't know, I genuinely do not think that without the actors who create those scenes, we can feel that true emotional connection, because them as human beings are translating their portion of imagination and experience into those characters. We experience the sorrow that Joel feels because Troy has translated it to us, and he's done it really well. We're meeting another character now. Tess. I knew 3 out of the 4 relevant names of the characters. This is sort of 20 years on, isn't it?
Yeah, so it's 20 years on. Obviously, Joel's been through kind of a lot. We've caught up with him where he is now. You can tell, obviously, he is older, but he's much more rugged. He's been through a lot of things. You can see the world starting to really break down. Like, obviously, the windows look a mess there. And when we go outside in a moment, you'll see kind of we're in this security zone, effectively. But effectively, what's happened to Joel now from a character point of view, he's essentially become like a smuggler of goods. So he's kind of turned, kind of a bit more of like a vigilante kind of style character. Obviously, it's a dark world at the moment, but he's not afraid of hurting people, lots of stuff.
He's grown the beard.
And he has grown that beard.
I'm so normal about the beard, I promise.
But yeah, it's like, I mean, even down to kind of obviously the cuts and bruises over his face and stuff, you can tell he's been through a lot. But he's effectively a different character from when we first encountered him. So yeah, it's
one
nice.
of my favourite assignments that we do at the university that I didn't do because I didn't do character art or anything like that. But there's an assignment that we do where we get students to make themselves as the Last of Us characters, and we get really deep into those discussions around the physical narrative of someone who's lived through an apocalypse, like wearing the same clothes every day because you wouldn't have the ability to go out and buy clothes. This is something you'll know way more than me about as an environment artist, and adding wear and tear to things.
Yeah, no, like obviously with the clothes thing being, obviously everything's gone, you can't go get a new outfit, whatever. But yeah, like on the visual side of things, like especially when we're making props, like I don't really want to say we've done like too much apocalyptic stuff. Like whenever I've been given creative freedom, I go the complete opposite and I make everything like futuristic because it's really fun to do that. But even just like adding like damage, you can have things like edge wear in like things like Substance Painter, or even hand painting in those damaged spots. You've got to look into the parts of, okay, where would this item be damaged? Because a common thing that people do is they put on the edge wear and every single edge is damaged, and it doesn't look right because you're not going to pick up something and everywhere is going to be broken down, has holes, has damage to it. you've got to like look at that and go, okay, say if you had like a suitcase, for example, an old damaged suitcase, you're going to look at where would that be held a lot? That's going to have a lot more damage. Where would like the clasps be open and closed? They're going to probably have a bit more like bits taken out of them, or like chunks of plastic taken out of the suitcase where it's hit the floor when you're rolling it along. You've got to like look at the object and go, okay, where would this be used? Then put the damage on those areas. Like that is a pro tip if you're coming here or if you're doing your own projects. Do not put edgeware on everything, in every corner. Piece of advice, it will get picked up on, you will notice it. It's not worth it.
I like it when they put that attention to detail in, and when they vary clothing and they change things up. Otherwise, there's some games that I've seen where it looks like everyone's raided the same H&M at the start of the apocalypse and just spent all of their time washing those clothes and keeping them in pristine condition. Awesome.
I think talking about like art style for this, I mean, this is actually the third release of the game, right? We're playing it on a PS5 at the moment. It originally came out for the PS3, and it looks visually stunning, right, in this remake. But yeah, we had like a PS4 remaster port too, which came out towards the start of the console generation for that one as well. And this is only came out last year, I believe. So it's really, really good. But this is obviously based off of kind of some of the tech that they were using in for The Last of Us Part 2, which is in and of itself an amazing game. So yeah, we can see that we're kind of just running through this.
You appear to be in trouble. You've done something wrong.
Some explosions went off. So, you know,
this is where they start peppering back in that environmental. You've run the wrong way and you've been hit by a man with a gun.
Well, I want to go that way, you know.
Alas, no. This is where they start to pepper in some of the narrative that you play the game through with.
Exactly, right. So it's an interesting one. Now, actually, because I was talking, I forgot where I was going. So
you're meant to be going. You're sort of Joel's running around in circles.
Yeah, I
he's
can't see it.
doing fine. Follow the lighting. Come on. We've just spoken for ages about how lighting guides the player.
Yeah.
What influences do we think The Last of Us had on sort of where gaming went in the next 10 years?
I mean, I think you only have to look at how much more narrative some games have been since that generation of games, right? So, as I mentioned towards the start, right, we had Uncharted 1 and 2 and 3, and it's Uncharted 2 and 3 are like really, really like strong games and kind of carry this kind of same sort of narrative throughout it, but we can see things like BioShock as well, right, and kind of the emotional impact that those type of games have. But I think games have just gotten more narratively heavy since these, and obviously as tech has grown, we've started to make games that'll look more and more realistic. Technology and the motion capture has come along. It's where they've gone now, right? So we have a lot more of these like story-focused games, like God of War, right? You know, the original God of War series on PS2 was very much like an action-style game, right? You know, you would go from room to room, fighting waves of enemies. Yes, there was a narrative in there, but then you fast forward to 2018 when we had the God of War kind of reboot, and you had this sort of like, you've now got Kratos and he's got his son, and you have this emotional impact between the two of them. And yes, we do have kind of scenes like this, these kind of like narrative-based scenes where we're kind of walking through and kind of get this expedition of kind of what's going on. But yeah, I think it's had a positive impact from a narrative point of view from games. We've got much more stronger storytelling in games.
It's a lovely like note in the genre of the combination of grumpy dad, sassy child that has formed like God of War as well. That was my favourite one I loved watching that through because I have a grumpy dad. Love me grumpy dad. But it was very much like on the nose.
Exactly. So, but no, it's all super, super powerful. I mean, we I forgot what I was going to say there now. Just gone. Completely.
I feel bad for calling my dad grumpy.
There we go. Well,
he's a great guy. Awesome. We're getting into the sort of actual gameplay bits now, where you're starting to actually play as Joel. What did you think of the actual sort of things like combat gameplay and stealth gameplay in this title?
So, I mean, going back to when it first came out, because this this port is very much more closer to the second game, but we have this like survival element to it, right? You know, you're kind of sneaking around, you've got to kind of stay silent 'cause with the clickers.
It's not easy to do.
Oh no, like
not with my back, I wouldn't survive the apocalypse.
But the enemies are based off of sound, right? Because that's against their clickers, that's how they communicate. The cordyceps have kind of like grown over their eyes, effectively. So they're blind creatures, and so they use sound to kind of detect the player. So you can use things like bricks and stuff to kind of distract them, and it kind of makes logical sense within inside of the game because they're again attracted to sound. And you had this really nice kind of like gameplay kind of going throughout it, and it's like where Naughty Dog really started to kind of build in that foray of what we would get from their stealth. And then moving on to the second game, that just takes it to kind of the next level. With that, we had like procedural animation, for instance, like you could jump off of a balcony and a gun could be flying in the air, and you can catch it like in mid-flight, and you could do all these like really cool emergent kind of bits of gameplay that was in it. So yeah, it's really, really good.
Is this the kind of game that you enjoy playing? That one was at you, Jodie.
Oh, is it me? Oh, wow. Yeah, no, I love, like I said, I've been playing more story games. I used to be a very sort of FPS heavy person, a lot of like shooting games, a lot of just things like that. But I took the time, I was like, you know what, no, stop this, play a different genre. And so I started on like Outlast. I fell in love with Outlast. Played part 2.
Why would you do that to yourself?
Because I'm a little bit mental, okay, and that's fine. You know, it's okay to be mental. But I started on that, fell in love with, even though it's a horror game, fell in love with like the story aspect of it, like getting guided by the light. I go back and play it sometimes, and I cry every time. But from there, I then played What Remains of Edith Finch, which was another game we studied in year 1. I love that game. I then played The Unfinished Swan, another one that we studied. Love that because that links in with Edith Finch a little bit. If you play both of them, character crossovers. But yeah, no, from there, it's just sort of like when I get a bit bored of FPS and shooting people in game, I'm like, wow, I need to go relax and play something. So I'll like jump on a story game, whether that's like rerunning like old ones or like finding new ones to play. Like there's so many that exist nowadays, especially with like more and more people getting access to making their own games with like open source, such as like, you know, Blender for like 3D creation, and you know, you can either do texturing in that as well, and like Unreal, you can program and code in, and that's free, and then you only have to pay royalties when you hit like a certain like X amount of money from like selling your game. Like it's so open to everyone. New story games are popping up, and just games in general all the time.
And we encourage narrative a lot here in our teaching because it helps to bring things together. When we're looking at things like creating gameplay, there's a mechanic that we've just experienced here where Tess has helped Joel up a wall and vice versa. There's a lot that you can read into there. If you're one of these weird narrative people like me, it's like, oh, they're helping each other. It helps bond them as characters. The gameplay leads into the narrative in that sense. So we look at games from a distance, and we see that things like gameplay influences narrative, and the gameplay elements and mechanics can lead back into narrative. And I think they've done that really well in The Last of Us, where a lot of the stuff that you do, let's say Joel and Ellie's relationship later on, a lot of the interactions you have with Ellie, she's not just a following character. She will throw you things like ammo, she'll join in on fights. She's very reactive to what's going on, and that kind of interaction really helps bring you together as a team. She becomes part of your experience rather than just a background character. Same with this ladder that we've just experienced, which does not look safe. That's not how you put a ladder on a wall safely, but we won't go there.
But yeah, I mean that's the first time obviously we've just seen outside in the game, right? And you can see all of the foliage that have started to like build up in the middle of a city block.
So many plants.
So many plants. It's
Very
great,
hardcore.
But
Makes me very happy. I love plants. Organic environment's like my favourite thing to make. Speed tree, my beloved.
Oh
Love
yes,
it.
speed tree.
Makes it so much
Fantastic.
easier than sculpting ZBrush. Sorry.
So, the TV series just come out. Second series has just come out. Have you watched Have you both seen the first series?
I have, yes.
Do you think it was a homage you think it was a good translation?
It was a very good translation, right? They had to make some creative changes. So they changed the way that the kind of infection spreads a little bit, which apparently they're bringing back for the second one, which is nice to see. But yeah, it was really good, and they really enhanced certain sections of the game. So we've got a scene later on in the game. In fact, actually, before I go on to that, because you hear that Joel's wearing his gas mask now. Yeah. They actually had to take that out of the first season, apparently. So this is why they changed the way that the infection spreads, because obviously they wanted people to really get attached to Joel as a character and to Ali. So they didn't want the characters to be behind gas masks like the entire time when they're filming. Whereas then obviously in a game, it's different. You don't really see the character's face anyway, except for when you're cutscenes.
Spores in the air, and they could catch the spores.
Exactly. So, but that wasn't in the first season. But yeah, there's a scene later in the game called Bill's Town, right? So it's about this guy that's been effectively kind of locked up. He's secured a nice holding for himself, put booby traps around and all of that sort of stuff, right, to protect himself, and he's really safe. And he has a character in the game he has a partner in the game called Frank, right? And in the game, you never actually meet Frank. You just kind of hear writing through like written dialogue, you pick up notes and all that sort of stuff. And then in the show, they did an entire episode dedicated just to those two as a couple, and it's one of the best pieces of like TV shows I've ever seen, right? Best episode.
Broke me.
Oh yeah, like it was incredible.
I know Frank's actor from another series or somewhere else, and they absolutely killed it. And I did not stop crying for a solid 5 minutes. I think it was a very nice homage to the game, even if it wasn't exact.
Yeah.
Oh.
You okay?
Yeah.
Oh dear.
There we go.
I personally think that they didn't have Pedro Pascal wear a gas mask in the series because he just spent all of the Mandalorian wearing a helmet, and I think his head was getting like compressed from all the things they were shoving it on. What did you think about the series, Jodie?
Loved it.
Yeah?
Loved it. Obviously, like, been a while since I've watched it. I should rewatch it, really. But, like, from what I can remember, like, visually and just the acting, phenomenal. Again, Pedro Pascal.
Yes, Pedro.
We love Pedro Pascal. No, but just in general, like, it did really pay attention to the detail. And, like, not just that, but there's been other pieces of, like, literature and games that have turned into, like, TV series and films. There's always going to be a bit of that creative freedom where they are going to have to change things up a little bit. And while you're like, not as really, as accurate to the game, it makes sense when obviously the following episodes and the rest of the series stick to that. Imagine like they just, they're like, oh, it spreads like this, and then the next episode they have gas masks on. Doesn't make sense. I feel like if you stick to the same sort of like plot line, you can forgive them for it, I'd say, like for changing things up. But it made sense with the TV series and the way it went. And again, obviously, don't want to squish poor Pedro into another helmet. They probably just didn't want to hide it because it's Pedro,
Yeah. And there's a natural evolution to stories. Like there was a lot of I want to say like discontentness around the second Last of Us game, where you didn't necessarily follow Joel anymore for reasons undisclosed. If you don't know that spoiler, get on the internet. But you end up playing as Ellie, and you also end up playing as, I believe her name is Abby?
Yep.
There we go. See, I know things. Played by the wonderful Laura Bailey, who's also a Critical Role actor. And I actually thought that was a really interesting change. I did play that game. Don't question why I haven't played the first one, but I have played the second one. I thought it was a really interesting dynamic that they were trying to show off here. Because again, at the base, these games are there to, what they've tried to do here is pivot a story around the relationship between two characters. And they do the same in the second one, where they do the like dichotomy between Ellie and between Abby. And I thought that was incredibly well done. Have you two played the second game?
Yeah, like I adore the second game, but just as a quick tangent, we just met some of the enemies kind of for the first time, so we just sneaked around, we kind of saw them, attacking people, and we just kind of did our first kind of like stealth takedown to kind of show us kind of how the game's going to start playing from there. But yeah, moving on to the second game, it is so strong. Like the gameplay was ramped up massively in that game, and the narrative is like emotionally challenging, I would say.
Yeah.
Like it really forces you as a player to not necessarily make decisions because it's a linear game, but like get into the shoes of those characters, right, and start to try and understand why they're making those uncomfortable decisions, really, because you don't necessarily agree with what the game is making you do, but you're doing it.
Do you play the second one?
Not yet.
Not yet?
Not yet,
Okay.
no. I've seen bits of it, but I haven't played it. I think my dad's got the second one, so I'm going to wait for him to finish the first one. He can go play the second one. I'll go do the first one.
Your dad needs to speed up. I'm just saying.
He's got a full-time job. But no,
So
Dad,
do
if
we.
you end up
We
watching,
find our way through games all the time.
Dad, if you end up watching this, please let me play. I just want to jump on, play the game. That's all I ask. That's all I ask.
And there was, just to touch on some more of a discussions around that second game, there was a lot of discourse around Abby as a character and how they designed Abby. And for starters, it was silly discourse around the way that they'd presented Abby as a character, Abby as a woman as well. To put it very plainly, it was incredibly negative in some ways. And I think that points towards a sort of unfortunate expectation of an audience of fools to have characters presented in exactly the right way that they want characters presented. I'm not going to dive too deep into that because I'm not an expert in that area. I've obviously got opinions, but one of the things I wanted to point at was this game is 11 years old, we can spoil it a bit, but at the end of The Last of Us 2, they do, Joel does something pretty controversial where he saves Ellie from people who are trying to sacrifice her to cure or create a vaccine for the zombie plague. And I think games, it was very interesting to experience that character doing something so morally grey. And I think that's a thing that games tend to do quite well. I don't know if you two have anything you want to add on to that.
I really like the ending of the first game, and obviously the TV show ends in a similar way. But it's very great. Again, you don't really know how it was going to end. We didn't know we were going to get a sequel at the time, right? You know, it took 7 years to come out. They weren't necessarily speaking about it up until kind of the build-up for it. So it had an ending where you could kind of make up your mind kind of how those characters would continue to kind of develop and have that relationship building forward, because Joel lies to Ellie, right? He's just done a mass murder, effectively. He's just kind of doomed the world. And like, you've got to kind of figure out what would go on there, and it's like, you need to, as a player, understand whether you think Joel was a hero or a villain in that scenario, right? And it's kind of based off of that relationship that you've built up with those characters. Would you have made the same choice as Joel? Like,
makes you question things.
Yeah.
And I think that's what makes it so good, because you have to put yourself in that situation, I guess. Like, if you were in Joel's position, would you have done the same thing? And I think it's that questioning that it just, I don't even know how to describe it. It makes you think, you know? Like, what would you have done?
Awesome.
What would you have done? Would you have, you know?
What would I have done?
Yeah, if you were in Joel's position.
I'm not nearly as athletic as he is, and I would have not been able to carry Ellie out.
Say if you were, hypothetically.
I would have spent a good 5 minutes finding a gurney to put her on. I'm not sure, because until you're put in that position, I don't have children of my own. I don't know if I've got a goddaughter, but without having that sort of built-up relationship, and you got to remember as well that they've lived through an apocalypse together. It's not a normal situation, and Joel has lost a daughter before, so there's so many layers of thought to it. I have no idea what I'd do in that situation.
And that's why it's so good, because it makes you think. You got to put yourself into that position and be like, okay, if I had this relationship or if I had this condition, and that's why it's just done so well. Yeah. Mwah. Chef's kiss.
Yeah. Chef's kiss. He's not going to do it.
Chef's kiss.
Chef's kiss. Thank you very much. That is a wonderful moment for us to end the episode on. We hope you've enjoyed this episode. Thank you to Jodie and Davin for joining me. Remember, there are lots of episodes of Level of Detail on our YouTube channel, so go and take a look. Thank you very much, and bye for now.